10 gallons an hour just sitting still. That's what the M1 Abrams burns at idle. Engine running. Tracks stopped. Doing nothing except existing. Push the throttle to full combat power, and that number becomes 60 gallons per hour. 1 gallon every 60 seconds. This tank runs on jet fuel, not diesel, not gasoline. The same JP-8 that fills the wings of a fighter aircraft, and the engine, burning that fuel, spins its internal blades at 17,000 revolutions per minute, faster than most aircraft turbine accessories ever see in level flight. In a ground vehicle, weighing 68 tons. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the U.S. Army put a jet engine inside its most important battle tank, and why that decision still costs billions of dollars every single time America goes to war. The engine that has no right to exist, inside the tank that refuses to stop. When the U.S. Army designed the M1 Abrams in the 1970s, they faced the same problem every tank designer faces. How do you move something that heavy, fast enough to matter on a modern battlefield? Germany answered with a diesel engine. So did the Soviet Union. So did Britain. Every major tank program on Earth, almost without exception, looked at the power density, the range, and the fuel economy of diesel, and chose it. America chose differently. The Army selected the AGT1500, a gas turbine engine, the same class of engine powering the aircraft that fly tankers into combat theater. And here's the belief most people carry into this conversation. They assume the turbine was the obvious superior choice. That diesel nations got it wrong, and America got it right. That belief is wrong. The turbine gave the Abrams extraordinary capabilities that diesel physically cannot match. But it came with a fuel penalty so severe it has dictated the outcome of armored campaigns, shaped entire military logistics doctrines, and caused the Army to seriously consider abandoning it more than once. Understanding why they kept it anyway is the real story, but here's where the engineering gets genuinely strange. What makes this even more extraordinary is what comes out of the back of this tank. The AGT1500's exhaust exits the vehicle at temperatures exceeding 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to ignite dry grass, hot enough to melt aluminum, hot enough to cause third-degree burns to a soldier standing within 10 feet of the rear of this machine. And that thermal plume doesn't just burn things on the ground, it paints the Abrams in brilliant white on every enemy thermal site within range. The same engine that makes it fast enough to win a gunfight makes it visible enough to lose one. That trade is not an accident. It is baked directly into physics, and it connects straight back to why the turbine was chosen in the first place. To understand why the Army made this choice and what it genuinely costs, you need to understand how the AGT1500 works at the mechanical level. There are three mechanisms that separate this engine from everything around it. The first is the Brayton cycle. Every gas turbine on Earth, every jet engine, every helicopter turboshaft, this engine runs on the same thermodynamic principle. Air enters. A series of compressor stages. Think of stacked fans getting progressively smaller and faster. Squeeze that air until its pressure climbs dramatically. Fuel injects into the compressed air and ignites, not in pulses like a piston engine, continuously, like a controlled torch that never stops burning. The expanding gases blast through turbine blades and spin an output shaft. Think of it like a hairdryer running in reverse. Instead of a motor spinning a fan to push air out, burning gas pushes through fan blades to spin a shaft. That shaft moves 68 tons. The second mechanism is what they call multi-fuel combustion. The AGT1500's combustion chamber runs at internal temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. That is hotter than the melting point of aluminum, hotter than copper, hotter than most metals you will ever encounter. At that temperature, the chemistry stops caring exactly what you burn. JP-8 jet fuel, diesel, kerosene, aviation gasoline. Any hydrocarbon that reaches that combustion chamber will ignite. It is the difference between a kitchen gas stove and a blast furnace. A stove needs exactly the right fuel at exactly the right pressure. A blast furnace is so hot, it will consume almost anything you throw into it. The AGT1500 is a blast furnace inside a tank. The third mechanism is where the turbine's advantage becomes almost unfair and where its cost becomes unavoidable. A diesel engine builds torque as it revs. You press the throttle, RPM climbs, power increases. The AGT1500 delivers maximum torque from 0 RPM. The instant the throttle moves, full rotational force hits the tracks. That is why a 68-ton machine reaches 20 miles per hour in 7 seconds, not because it has a powerful engine, because it has an engine that punches at full strength from the first instant, like a fighter who throws their hardest punch before the opening bell. But here's the problem. A turbine spinning at 17,000 revolutions per minute cannot connect directly to tank tracks that need to move at human speeds. Between the turbine output and the tracks sits the X11003B transmission, itself an engineering achievement, which steps those RPMs down by orders of magnitude while multiplying the torque. That transmission works. But the turbine still burns fuel at 17,000 revolutions per minute, whether the tank is attacking at full speed or idling in a staging area. Waiting. Burning 60 gallons an hour. Waiting. And in a real combat deployment, with maintenance windows, tactical halts, refueling pauses, tanks spend far more time at idle than at full throttle. The fuel doesn't know the difference, but the number that really puts this into perspective is 60,000. One company of 14 Abrams tanks, 1 day of sustained combat operations, 60,000 gallons of JP-8. And when the Pentagon factored in the full cost of delivering that fuel to a forward armor position in Iraq or Afghanistan, the convoy escorts, the security personnel, the airlift, the logistics overhead, the delivered price exceeded $400 per gallon. That means one company, 1 day, costs over $24 million in fuel logistics alone. That number changes everything about how you see this engine. The AGT1500 is not just an engineering choice, it is a financial commitment that follows the Army into every theater it enters, permanently. So given everything you just heard, the fuel appetite, the thermal signature, the logistics overhead, why does the Army still use this engine? 3 reveals, each one more impressive than the last. The first is the feature nobody talks about, the power pack swap. The entire AGT1500 engine, transmission, accessories, is designed as a single module. 1 unit. A trained crew can pull it from the hull and drop in a replacement in under 30 minutes. In a field environment, during a deployment, without a maintenance depot, a crew of mechanics with the right equipment can swap the heart of a 68-ton battle tank faster than most people change a car's brake pads. The diesel alternative of the 1970s offered no comparable rapid replacement. The turbine was expensive and hungry, but it was also repairable at a pace diesel could not match in forward conditions. Here is where the misconception from earlier collapses. The Army did not choose the turbine because it was better in every way. They chose it because they were solving a different problem than range and fuel economy. They were solving the problem of battlefield availability. A tank that can be repaired in 30 minutes and put back into action is tactically more valuable than a tank that burns less fuel but takes 6 hours to fix. The turbine was never the efficient choice. It was the robust choice. Those are not the same thing. The second reveal is the power-to-weight ratio, and this is the number that genuinely surprises engineers who study it for the first time. The AGT1500 produces 1,500 horsepower. It weighs 2,430 pounds. The vehicle it moves weighs 147,200 pounds. The engine is less than 1.7% of the total vehicle weight, and it pushes that vehicle to 45 miles per hour on paved road. No diesel engine fielded in a Western Main battle tank in the same era comes close to that power-to-weight ratio. The turbine earns its keep in raw performance in a way that no specification sheet fully captures until you see it move. The third reveal is the multi-fuel capability. And this is the one with the deepest strategic consequence. Because the AGT1500 will burn virtually any hydrocarbon, the Abrams can be refueled from almost any fuel supply it encounters. Captured diesel stores, aircraft fuel, emergency civilian fuel stocks. In a logistically degraded environment, the kind that makes or breaks armored campaigns, that flexibility is not a small advantage. It is the difference between a tank that keeps fighting and one that becomes an expensive monument to poor planning. And this is the detail that changes everything. America was not the only country that made this bet. The Soviet Union equipped the T-80 with a gas turbine, the GTD-1250, producing 1,250 horsepower, same cycle, same fuel appetite. And in December 1994, T-80S rolled into the city of Grozny, Chechnya. The urban terrain consumed their fuel faster than anything their logistics chain could handle. Resupply convoys could not reach forward positions through the rubble and the ambushes. Functioning T-80S, not destroyed, not disabled, fully operational, were abandoned by their crews because they had run out of fuel and could not move. Russia took that lesson and developed the T-90 with a diesel engine. They reversed the turbine decision within a decade. America watched the exact same events and did not. That divergence is the most important strategic question hanging over this entire video. But here's what most people never realize. America watched Grozny. U.S. Army analysts studied the T-80's failure in detail. They understood exactly what a gas turbine does to a logistics chain in urban terrain. They saw Russian crews abandoning functional tanks. And 3 months after Grozny ended, the Army published logistics studies reaffirming the AGT-1500. In 2003, Abrams tanks drove through the streets of Baghdad. Same urban environment, same tight terrain. The fuel consumption problem had not disappeared, but the logistics chain built around it had been running for 25 years by then. Forward fuel points, JP-8 standardization across Army and Air Force assets, aerial resupply rehearsals, an entire logistical infrastructure constructed specifically because the Abrams demanded it. Russia's T-80 failed in Grozny because its logistics chain was not built around its appetite. The Abrams succeeded in Baghdad because its logistics chain was built around nothing else. The U.S. Army did not change the engine to fit the logistics. The Army changed the logistics to fit the engine, and that restructuring, the JP-8 single fuel concept, the forward fuel infrastructure, the rapid power pack logistics, now spans every major American military installation on the planet. Switching the Abrams to diesel today would not just require a new engine. It would require dismantling and rebuilding the logistics architecture of the entire U.S. ground force. That is either the most impressive feat of institutional commitment in modern military history, or the most expensive case of sunk cost in the history of armored warfare. Military historians have not agreed on which. 60 years after the first turbine proposals, 50 years after production began, the AGT-1500 is still the engine of America's most important battle tank because the Army built its entire world around it. Here is the question worth fighting over. Should the Army replace the AGT-1500 with a modern diesel, or has the logistics infrastructure built around it made switching more expensive than staying? Leave your answer below. If you want to understand why the SR-71 Blackbird was deliberately designed to leak fuel on every runway, and what that reveals about how America actually builds its most extreme machines, I've already broken that down in full. It's right here.